So thank you very much, Eric and Thibaut. It was very interesting. So for the first time in this event, we talk a lot about gaming, and we asked Thibaut if he believes in a use case for the land that corporate bought, and it doesn't look really optimistic. But we're going to talk about another type of metaverse, corporate metaverse or even industrial metaverse, and we really believe that there are very great opportunity in this metaverse. So we'll discuss it with my three guests. So I can see them on the screen. So maybe we'll start with Thomas Lacroix. Thank you for being with us. So Thomas, you're Chief Technical Officer at Cosmo digital twin startup. I'm correct? So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I see Xavier Perez. Thank you for being with us. It was quite difficult, and I'm very happy you're finally here with us. So Xavier, you're presently the director of the Azure entity of Microsoft France.
Right.
And Walter, yes, sorry, Xavier.
Just saying hi to everyone. Apologies for not being there.
Okay, thank you for being here. I only do a short bio because we are running out of time. And Walter, can you hear us?
I can.
Walter, yeah?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, because we can't see you, but if you can hear us, it's already great. Oh. So Walter, thank you for being with us. You're joining us from Los Angeles, and you're a seasoned digital business executive for over 20 years of experience leading and advising some of the world's largest group, and you were previously Chief Business Officer at Magic Leap. So we'll start this round table because we're running out of time, and we'll start with the first question that may seem quite obvious at first glance, but you know, when you speak about metaverse with many people, with friends, with colleagues, they don't really know what is metaverse, and we see it with Eric and Thibaut. There are several metaverse. So maybe the first question will be, what is the metaverse? Tell us about your vision of the metaverse. Maybe Thomas, you want to start?
Yes, with pleasure.
And there are slides, and I think you have some slides.
Yes, and I will try to make it work. So it's true that, I mean, there are plenty of definitions of the metaverse. We have seen the previous intervention, but for a company, companies sees metaverse a lot about interactions between people and the physical environment. It's about virtual meetings, having avatars in your meeting. It's about the experience when you purchase the clothes, you test it on your body before purchasing it. It's about as well when you're a maintenance operator, how to make sure you can repair a machine when it's not easily located or accessible. And those experiences are really based on having real-time information on the situation. But if you look at, from our own perspective, what we call the industry metaverse, you have to look at how industries interact with their environments. And industries interact with their environment beyond physics and physical elements. And no, that's not those slides.
There are not a good slide. Maybe we can have the right one.
If you manage to find the right slides. Otherwise, I will continue. So that goes beyond the physical environment. A company, and on my example, for example, I will take an operator of a wind farm. A wind farm, an operator interacts with the market first. So interacting the market on the price of the energy, for example, that's the first level of interaction. The second one is about, for example, finance. You need to interact through budgeting, CAPEX, OPEX. You need to interact with your supply chain as well. And you need to interact, of course, with the physics of the element. So that's many different ways of interacting with the environment, the ecosystem for a company. And if you want to model that and to replicate in a virtual world, then you need to go beyond only physics, interaction, like voice and vision, for example. And in addition to that, as a company, what matters as well is how, hey, here it is. So this was my example on the, we can see it, but this was an example of a 3D on the wind farm. And if I can put it on the, can you put it on the big screen now? Is it, yeah, great. So typically that's a typical example of 3D visualization of a wind farm, and you have performances on how will my windmill will fail at some point. So that's a very classic use case that you can find today. But this is a screen of the reality. The reality is that, like, if you look at the data, it's really about interaction between many aspects of your system beyond the physics and what I just mentioned. And you can look at that through geography or many of different ways of looking at your data. But what I want to mention before leaving the micro to the other one is, as a company, what matters as well is how you forecast and how you look at your future, your financial future, your exposure to risk, and how to react to that, and how to test scenario, how to report on various type of KPIs that goes beyond physics. It's as I said, market price, for example. So as a company, you have this systemic view, and where I will say one of the metaverse about a single replica of one environment. Company is actually to replicate many type of environments and play with that through scenario and through analysis. So there is a multiplicity of metaverse for industries.
Thank you, Thomas. So maybe, Walter, you want to tell us your vision of the metaverse?
Sure. You guys can see me now, right?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, great. So I feel like we're probably going to repeat a lot of the same types of comments. I'll try and be as creative as possible here, but we all know that there's a lot of history that's gone into the metaverse, and like we just saw on the slides before, with confusion by investors, including crypto, Web3, and NFT into these baskets, that just amplifies the confusion. But really, there have been people working at this for a long time, those in the gaming space, those in working avatars. What really I view this as is it's a new interface. It's a new way of expressing data, right? And that's how I view the metaverse from a corporate perspective. And that, I'm excited to talk more about that, but that's kind of the brief vision that I see.
Okay, thank you, Walter. And Xavier Perret, could you tell us about your vision, the Microsoft vision?
Yeah, sure. So, well, for Microsoft, I think you have to remember Microsoft mission statement, which is how to empower through technology every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. I think metaverse, the way I would phrase or frame a metaverse is the fact that you can now synchronize on a real-time basis, physical and digital at the same time. And the fact that you could do that through people, through processes, or through spaces, which is basically there are three types of metaverse. I think one we talked a lot before, which is kind of the gaming or the consumer metaverse, where we talked a lot about it because that's the one we see like potentially the future of social networks and so on. And you might notice that we are in the process of acquiring Activision Blizzard, which is a great gaming company, but also for the technology behind. There's a collaborative enterprise metaverse, which is basically, especially the young generation, but more and more we want to incorporate in our corporate collaboration processes the fact that, hey, there might be some, as Walter was defining, there might be some moments where we want to collaborate through Excel sheets, which are hopefully 3D complicated, and it's probably better to do it in 3D environments. And we want that kind of gaming experience, but in the enterprise market. And for us, that's kind of one part of the evolution of Teams, obviously. And it's a platform which is called Mesh for Teams. And the third type of metaverse is the one that Thomas described, because we're working a lot with Cosmo, which is the industrial metaverse, which is basically how do you connect through Internet of Things, through digital twins, spaces, processes, so that you can simulate them in a digital environment, in the cloud, in Azure, in the cloud, and then you can show what kind of future you can say and optimize. So you could optimize through ROIs, through financials. You want to optimize your processes, your supply chain, your logistics, or you want to optimize the sustainability impact, for example. And that part, by the way, this industrial metaverse is a reality today. I mean, all the technological stacks are here, and there's a lot of companies now working on it. And that's why you also, by the way, and we're going to talk about it, but we're working with Cosmotic about it.
Yes, thank you, Xavier. So we see we have a lot of use case in. We guess we have a lot of use case in Metaverse. So we are going to talk about figures and data because we're in a bank. So how big is the corporate Metaverse market? Xavier, maybe you can answer this question first.
Yeah, so I mean, let's face it, it's pretty new. Again, the stacks, I mean, the technological stacks are here. So now with the cloud, you can do a lot of things, which covers obviously the evolution of Internet of Things and digital twin, the way you can simulate an environment, all the analytics parts, so the AI and the data platforms, and also the headsets, I would say, which are called HoloLens within Microsoft. So this is available, which means that today, a lot of companies, especially today, I would say supply chain companies, industrial companies, wants to use it to optimize their process. So we get a couple of examples, especially with Cosmotic, like Nexans, for example, which is a great company trying to redefine its processes and be a software company, and is using those kind of stacks. So I would say the market is just like nascent, but it's nascent, but there's a huge demand about it now that is starting. And I think it's pretty new because those stacks, those technology were existing before, but now they're like compiled in a way which is much more easier and cost effective to use.
Okay, because I have data from Bloomberg, and they say in total the Metaverse revenue opportunity will be worth $800 billion by 2024. Do you have an idea of the data for the industrial Metaverse, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very hard to define because you're using stacks, technological stacks, which are available, whether it's you call it Metaverse or not.
Yeah.
What is sure is the industrial part of it, the processes Thomas described earlier. Yeah, that's part of a big chunk of opportunities for companies to optimize their resources there. So I don't know the numbers, but obviously this is huge because you're in the core center of the industry to optimize supply chains, logistics, collaborative platforms there.
Okay, and Walter, do you agree with that? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I want to back up Javier a little bit, and I'll give a Microsoft example. About 12, 14 months ago, there was the announcement about the IVAS partnership with Microsoft. Now, that partnership was announced as a $22 billion deal. Now, being a competitor, I kind of dug in a little bit, and if you actually analyze that number, a large portion of that was cloud. So it is a very difficult answer to provide because you start commingling not only the platforms, the headsets, but then you start bringing in all of the necessary systems and processes in order to enable. And cloud is probably the biggest one that's getting most of the press. 5G will come and be a major player as well. But if you look at some of the data that's thrown out there, and again, this is where this metaverse slogan, this rallying word has provided the ability to create large numbers that you're quoting from Bloomberg. But what I've seen so far is the numbers are for augmented reality, one component of this, not virtual reality, is about $6 billion right now, trending to about $100 billion by the end of the decade for just augmented reality. You start adding in virtual reality, and now you start talking about cloud, you start talking about 5G, and then the software component of it. The numbers are going to be astronomical, but it's very difficult because you need to define what metaverse is before you give the number. So for me, the perspective is that these numbers are great, but it's about the use cases and the industries that are being developed as a result of this technology. And I know we're going to get into that a little bit deeper, but there have been companies working on this for quite some time. You have Microsoft that's been doing this. You have companies like PTC, multi-billion-dollar company, and then you have growth companies like Tactile. These companies are all in the training and maintenance and communication industries, which are a core component of what we're doing here in Metaverse, which is far beyond just NFTs and crypto that is commonly defined as.
Yes. Maybe Thomas, you want to add something, or?
On the market size, no, I think. But for sure, at our level, we see an acceleration over the last 12 months on adoption, and the market as well is getting educated, I think, and it's quite going fast.
Yes, we're going to speak about that later. So, Thomas, it's a question for you. So, many people associate the industrial metaverse, largely symbolized by digital twin, to 3D visualization and to augmented reality or virtual reality headset. But your solution at Cosmo Tech is not necessarily doesn't necessarily fit with this general public view. So maybe you can explain us what is a digital twin, but you already did it in the first question, but maybe tell us the difference between standard simulation and simulation digital twin, and maybe it could be very interesting to have some concrete use case in which Cosmo Tech is involved.
Yeah, sure. So it's true that simulation is not something that is completely new. I mean, we have been talking about simulation since decades. The thing is now when you start to combine simulation and digital twin, you combine actually the capability to be in sync with the real world, together with the capability to produce new insight on the future direction. So you have what you get at the end is the capability to get past, present, and future data on where you will be going and where you are today, and have the capability to test scenario in a way that is auditable, transparent as well for everyone. And this is really what simulation digital twin about is doing that at the system level, not only on the physical asset or one particular point of your system. It's really on your company, on your ecosystem. And you could summarize that as if you don't have simulation digital twin, what you get is on digital twin is really good information on where you are today and alerting on that. When you bring the simulation on that, you bring through connectivity the capability to understand the consequence of this disruption. And companies are more and more aware that disruption are hitting their business and getting some insight on what will be the impact of the disruption and how to act on that testing scenario. That's really what is new in a simulation digital twin. And to give you a couple of examples, yes. So for example, we have been working with Michelin that is using simulation digital twin to optimize their sourcing and improving their profit margin by 5% on that. We have been working as well with companies in the supply chain that improve their production throughput over the next hours, making sure that the way they manage their manufacturing and supply chain actually will produce more throughput and reacting much more quicker to the disruption in a better way as well.
Okay, very interesting. So we're going to talk about other use case. Maybe, Walter, you were a Chief Business Officer at Magic Leap, a company specialized in augmented reality headset. So what was the use case you had been working on when you were at the company? And maybe you can tell us, for you, how can augmented reality add value to the corporate world?
Sure. So, look, I view it as a very powerful productivity tool, right? So this technology will enable digital transformation efforts for industrial workers that knowledge workers have had for years. So training, maintenance, communications, like I said earlier, are some of the bigger case studies. And then the industry rollout that we focused on at Magic Leap is very public, which is, in the public sector, in health and manufacturing and areas like that. And when you start looking at some of the depth of the technology, you can get into use cases that leverage the technology, such as eye tracking. But what the kind of opportunity is that for knowledge workers, the metaverse, as we're defining it here, is really an incremental change to what they do. For example, how much better is a 2D meeting versus a 3D meeting? Incrementally better, right? However, for frontline workers, the meta delivery of solutions and 5G, like I was talking to before, have the ability to massively transform industries. And what we're talking about, which is exciting at this industrial metaverse, is really, like I said, is bringing the same types of access that knowledge workers have had to the frontline workers, to the industrial workers, and the enablement behind the scenes to be able to measure and to analyze and to take advantage of a lot of those tools that have just not permeated those frontline workers.
Yeah, that's great. And Xavier, what about Microsoft? Can you tell us about the concrete use case you have been working at Microsoft?
Yeah, I mean, maybe complimenting Walter, I mean, he's totally right. The great use case is remote training, for example. There's a number of industries, talking about like nuclear plants, where you get a lot of complex stuff in front of you, and you cannot be trained for everything. And using augmented reality and the pass-through, so that's mixed reality and HoloLens, and you're able to have someone, through Teams, in fact, to remote assist you. You have a kind of surimpression of what you have to do. You're learning faster, and so that's the good way. For example, that's a great use case. That's usually the first use case because there's three advantage of that. One is ROI, for sure. You don't need someone. You're not going to send someone, a trainer, to any of the plants of the or any of the facilities. Second is sustainability, as I was saying. I mean, you don't send him, so you have less travel. So in a sense, and that's interesting because now the industry companies are looking at that. And the third part is you're learning in a better way because you're in a more immersive way. So that's a lot better than instead of reading a manual, for example. And so that's kind of the first like use cases. That's, I think, Walter, you kind of mentioned, which is not like incremental in that way, but which has a great aspect. And then the second part usually is collaborative. Then you start to collaborate through documents, which is 3D documents in a totally different way. So that's why probably the industry and the frontline worker, that's what I was mentioning, are probably the first kind of use cases because there's real value added there in the industry, and we tend to forget that. And in fact, it's not a low-level engineer who is working on a nuclear plant. That one needs to be trained in the right way, and that's a good way to improve the process here. And the quality, by the way, the security and safety.
Okay, thank you, Xavier. So we hear that we understand through these different use cases you mentioned that the metaverse has many advantages. So you were talking about reducing uncertainty. Companies can take better decisions. You're talking about frontline workers. There is a real advantage for them. And Xavier, during our preparation call, you mentioned sustainability. So it's very interesting. So how can the metaverse help reduce the carbon footprint? And do you have use case in Microsoft?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we talk a lot about, obviously, the way we have to, as a tech company, obviously, we have strong commitments to decrease, to be net zero and even net negative in terms of carbon, water, etc. So using those kind of technology, cloud technology, should be in the best way, and that's kind of our commitment. But at the same time, the cloud also and those technology can help in sustainability use cases, especially when you need to, for example, and that's something we worked on with Cosmo in the same way in some projects, like where you have a complex ecosystem because you want to have the best place to put some wind or solar farm, for example. But the fact that you're applying in a physical space here has an impact on all the overall ecosystem, the way the people is going to move, the way they're going to use their car and their electric car. Where should you put recharging batteries? So I think in that sense, digital twins and metaverse is in fact part of the solution to say, hey, we should better simulate. We're going to simulate what's the best way and optimize. And so that's the way to use the cloud for sustainability and creating environmental data platforms for me. And that's something probably we need to work on. Again, I'm a strong believer that in fact we are not working enough to build interconnected environmental data platforms so that we can then make better insights, make better decisions to reduce, obviously, the cost of those environmental, I would say, constraints or impacts.
That's very interesting. That's another aspect of the metaverse people don't think about. Maybe you are talking about your collaboration with Cosmo, and I think you have some example in sustainability, maybe with Nexans.
Yes,
yeah.
and I mean one of the things today, sustainability is of course on the agenda of an ECO, and what we have been seeing from customers recently is that they are being pushed, of course, to report on their emissions, and some of that is, I mean, reasonable. Achievable in terms of getting data and reporting data. Scope 1 typically is this, Scope 2 is not that hard as well. But when it comes to the supply chain, that's get a bit more tricky. And companies have a hard time to get the right data on the emission and supply chain, but as well, what they should do now in terms of what kind of target do they set, and what is their plan to achieve those targets. And we've been working with a few companies on that. The first one is Nexans, and that was mentioned a bit earlier. So Nexans has announced during the last investor presentation in end of Q1, I think, that they are putting this new E3 model in place where they will report, of course, on their emission, but as well they plan to be carbon neutral in 2030, like other companies. And they have decided to implement that through, the process of that, decision process, through digital twins. So helping them to report, of course, and to test all the scenarios that they need to achieve this target of carbon neutrality from their own emission, but as well up to the upstream and downstream emission on their supply chain. And the second example I will take is we have been working as well with Microsoft on the city that is south of Paris, it's Paris-Saclay, and we're working with them on helping them to take control of their decision around energy. Before, the energy decision was really the last thing they were considering in their infrastructure management. You build an infrastructure, it should look nice, it should be functional, of course, but the energy side of a data center, of a new building, is not something that they thought through upfront. And they want to take back control on that, and they want to master how energy will be consumed and how they can as well become carbon neutral, but still be competitive in terms of energy price, attractivity, and digital twins is helping them to report as well, but as well to better plan across the entire process of infrastructure planning.
Thank you, Thomas. It's very interesting because we see that tech can help in the green transition, and that's an interesting point. So maybe, Walter, you want to add something on sustainability and metaverse?
Not all too much on sustainability. It is absolutely one of the key. Like I said, a lot of these different topics are merging into one, and I kind of view the ability to leverage the metaverse in this corporate discussion that we're having as kind of a cousin of the sustainability effort. It should work hand in hand in becoming an effective tool to help to drive down to improve sustainability, but nothing much more to say on that.
Okay, thank you, Walter. So we're going to talk now about the ecosystem. So Metaverse is a result of the aggregation of different technology. You said cloud, Internet of Things, augmented reality, virtual reality, software. And so how do we build this very complex ecosystem? Are partnerships crucial? Or do you think that one startup company, one innovative company can go it alone? So maybe we'll start with Thomas, maybe, or Xavier, because you work together. So it's interesting to see that a company like Cosmotech works with big tech like like Microsoft.
I let Thomas explain our partnership if he wants. I mean, say what he thinks about our partnership, but maybe to explain. I mean, because that's kind of the nature of the cloud. The cloud is open by default. If I say, you might not know, but Microsoft is so much open source now. Is the first contributor of open source. There's more open source, I would say, software in Azure, so in the cloud than Windows Server or whatever Microsoft technology. So what's interesting is it's open by nature, and the way to develop, by the way, those business is open by nature. And we work through partnerships. We work with what we call ISV, software vendors, like Cosmo, so that whenever they're making business on top of Azure, obviously we're growing together there. And so you have to understand now that there are, when you call the industrial metaverse, 3 stacks of technology where we have partners. First one is really Internet of Things and digital twin capabilities. That's kind of the core of what I call the synchronization of the physical and the digital space here. And again, that's available today. And that's what's using also Cosmotech. The second part is all the analytics, the AI, all those technologies, which are now amazing. We don't talk much about it, but that's also why now there's so many algorithms available, easily available to either data scientists or others that you can use to simulate a complex process and so on. And also there, for example, we got many partners like Databricks and so on. And on top of it, we get the visualization or the collaboration, which is the HoloLens I was mentioning about, the way to interact, to collaborate, and there also we are partnering. So all those stacks, I would say, those 3 stacks are open. You can use some of them, all of them. That's kind of the nature of the co-petition, I would say, that is available in the market today, which makes it interesting. But again, I want to insist that everything is more open source than ever. Even the digital twin capabilities that I talked about is in fact open source. Why? Is because if there's an ecosystem with a smart city that want to use, but also manufacturer, but also, and they want to use the same kind of data, we want to be sure that the digital twin they will build is interconnected. Otherwise, it will be isolated, and they'll not be able to simulate whatever makes sense there. So that's why I think the key message here is the openness, so that anyone can build, obviously, values. And again, you might not know, but last year, I think, and Thomas can correct me if I'm wrong, but Satya Nadella put it in his in one of our big shows, which is called Ignite. It put up in his keynote Cosmotech as a great example of partners who are building value on top of us worldwide. So that makes it interesting. We're really proud to with Cosmotech on that one.
Okay,
thank you, Xavier.
Yes, Thomas, we are running out of time, so we really have to speed up. You had a video, but maybe it's we can't.
Yeah, that's fine.
We can't see it another time, maybe. I'm so sorry. So maybe, Walter, you want to add something on partnership, or they are important?
I'll go quickly. Yeah, I'll go quickly. So, just one organization that I think is doing a great job in bringing multiple different partners, whether from the early stage technology companies or old line traditional manufacturing heavy asset businesses, is the World Economic Forum. They've made an investment in hiring people, creating different forums across the globe for people to discuss, whether it's virtually when we were in the height of COVID or now face-to-face in meetings like in Davos. And I think those are the types of necessary glue to put in place in order to demystify what is a complicated but frankly a very achievable rollout plan over a period of time. I think a lot of times people get ahead of themselves and think this is going to happen within months and days. But if you start taking a longer term perspective and you have players such as Microsoft and Meta and Google and Apple, who are some of the largest companies in the world, alongside such important organizations like the World Economic Forum, you start seeing this become very clear, over a period of time.
Okay, thank you, Walter. So we're going to finish this roundtable with a question first to you, Thomas. So how can the adoption of digital twin be accelerated? You were always telling us that it was growing.
Yes, I mean, there is a couple of things I can say on that. So the first thing is, Metaverse and digital twin, that can be pretty large in terms of scope. So, and companies now, they want to have a ROI and a concrete use case in a very short period of time. So the first thing is I mean, bringing back some real value, tangible value from the virtual reality for the metaverse down to the companies in a reasonable time and making concrete example. So having use cases on small scope that you can deliver incrementally. That's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, continuing to educate the market and talk about the use case on those different types of metaverse. And especially on our side, the industry metaverse, that's not something that people have in mind when you talk about metaverse and what kind of use case and value in companies we can bring them. That's something that needs to be explained as well over the next months. Yeah.
Okay, so I hope people will see the replay or they are already connected and will learn a lot. And maybe a last question, maybe to Walter and to Xavier. Are there ongoing technological developments that will make it easier to adopt augmented reality or virtual reality headset? So who wants to talk first? Xavier, Walter?
Yeah, I can start. Maybe
okay,
there are two. There's two dimensions which is appearing because you still need kind of to be a developer to kind of optimize your platform and so on. So there's two dimensions which is today true in the developer world, I would say, and will apply in the industrial metaverse. One is low code, no code. So the ability to have tools to be able to create metaverse application, I would say, without any line of code. So that's one trend, one which makes it more accessible to any companies, even a smaller, I would say, industrial company. And the other part of it is AI tools, which applies to developers so that you can, even through natural language processing, for example, you say, hey, I want an app who is doing that, that, and that, and automatically it kind of frame the code to build up the foundations for your app so that it speeded up the process. This is really two technological dimensions here that are under development within Microsoft that are available. So it's called GitHub Copilot, for example, but which shows that, hey, it's going to be even more accessible in the future. Obviously, you can still, if you want, like fine-tune, do the tooling, if you're a developer and hard coder, I would say, but it's going to be even more accessible, more and more accessible to all the companies.
Okay, that's a great news. And Walter, do you want to add something?
No, I think, I'll add, and I think we're at time, but I think Xavier nailed that question. But if we take that and we broaden it a little bit higher, I think the investment into the developer ecosystem is key, right? Okay. So what Javier was talking about is as how they actually go to, get involved and develop. But frankly, a lot of that community is not necessarily heavily invested by, the powers that be in Silicon Valley and other software environments. But that is a key cog to accelerating this adoption that I feel doesn't get enough press sometimes. But that's really what I think, combining what I'm saying with what Javier just said, I think that's kind of the acceleration mechanism that will happen to unlock growth.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we have some time for some questions. I think there are questions online, but maybe we don't have time. So maybe it's a question for you, Thomas. In which sector do you see the best potential of development for digital twins?
I think in the short term, it's about a lot of supply chain, resiliency, and sustainability. I think it will continue to be like that over the next months, I guess.
Okay. Do we have other questions? Okay. 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 So I think we're going to end this roundtable. Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you very much, Xavier. Thank you very much, Walter. I'm very sorry we didn't have enough time. It was really, really interesting. And I hope we can meet again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Walt.
So thank you very much to all the speakers. I think it was very interesting. I think everybody was following, very intensely what was said. You'll have a replay at your disposal online in a few days. We are also having, for those of you who are here in the room, the ability to test some of the devices outside. So thanks a lot for everyone to join that, and looking forward to continue the dialogue with those of you who want to continue. Thank you.